My name is Veronica, and the day my face appeared on the news was the day everything changed. For years, the voices in my life told me I was worthless. My parents, my ex-husband, even my so-called friends, they all looked at me as if I was destined to fail. "You'll never be anything," they said. But the night the cameras captured my smile, announcing me as the CEO of a company valued at over $100 million, I knew I had finally won. And it wasn't just a victory in business. It was revenge against every single person who underestimated me, betrayed me, and tried to bury me in silence. I didn't grow up believing I could do great things. My parents were practical people, too practical. They believed stability was better than ambition. When I told them as a teenager that I wanted to run my own company one day, my father laughed. "Veronica," he said, "dreams like that are for people with money, connections, power. Not for you. You're just an ordinary girl. Be realistic." His words sank deep, carving doubt into my bones. But a small ember of defiance stayed alive. In college, I studied finance and technology, desperate to prove myself. That's when I met Daniel. He was charming, ambitious, already working at a mid-sized firm with dreams of climbing the ladder. He told me he believed in me. He told me he loved my drive. And I believed him. We married young. I thought I had found someone who would stand beside me, encourage me, and share in the dream I had carried since childhood. But as the years passed, I began to notice a pattern. Every time I reached for something more, Daniel pulled me back. "Why work so hard?" he would say. "We're comfortable. You don't need to prove anything." But I did. I wanted to build something that was mine. So I worked late nights, studied business models, scribbled ideas into notebooks when Daniel was asleep. And then one night I overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, conspiratorial. "She thinks she's going to launch this company," he said, laughing. "But I'm not letting her waste my money chasing a fantasy. I'll make sure she stays in her lane. Trust me, she'll never be anything." The words froze me in place. He wasn't my partner. He was my cage. The next day I confronted him. "I heard what you said, Daniel. You don't believe in me." He didn't even flinch. "Of course I don't. Veronica, you're delusional. You think you can be a CEO? Look at you. You can barely handle our bills. Stop embarrassing yourself and focus on being my wife. That's all you'll ever be good for." It was betrayal, not of the body but of the soul. He had broken the vow to support me, to stand beside me. That night I packed a suitcase. "I'm leaving," I said simply. Daniel sneered. "Fine. But without me you'll end up with nothing. No money. No future. You'll regret this." Maybe he was right. I had no plan, little savings, and a heart that felt like shattered glass. But as I walked out of that house, I carried something more valuable than money. Freedom. And a promise to myself. I would prove him wrong. I would prove them all wrong. The road wasn't easy. I slept on Marianne's couch for months, piecing together freelance jobs to pay for food. Every rejection email from investors stung like a knife. But each no only sharpened me. The idea for my company, a platform blending finance with AI-driven technology, was strong. I knew it. I just needed the right proof, the right timing. And so, I began gathering not just ideas but evidence. Evidence of what I was capable of. Then one night an email arrived that made my heart stop. A major investor wanted a meeting. My shot at turning a dream into reality had come, but so had the risk of failure. The email glowed on my laptop screen. The subject line so unreal I read it 3 times before daring to breathe. Invitation to discuss investment opportunity. The sender was Julian Price, a venture capitalist whose name carried weight across the city. His firm had backed some of the biggest startups in the last decade. For someone like me, a woman with no family money, no corporate ladder to climb, this was the door I had been pounding on in the dark. I sat frozen, whispering aloud, "This is it." Marianne cheered when I told her. "You've earned this, Veronica. All those nights building prototypes, testing code, pitching to deaf ears, it's finally paying off." But excitement was braided with fear. One meeting could change my life. Or confirm Daniel's cruel prophecy. I spent nights preparing, revising my pitch until the slides burned into my vision. I polished my financial model, mapped projections, rehearsed every question I thought he might ask. By the morning of the meeting, my nerves hummed like live wires, but I was ready. Or so I thought. Julian's office was sleek, glass walls catching the city skyline, everything about it screaming power. He greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Veronica, thank you for coming. I've heard interesting things." We sat across from each other. I launched into my pitch. My voice was steady, my slides clear. I outlined the market gap, explained how my platform could revolutionize personal finance. He listened, expression neutral, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Impressive. Ambitious. You've done your homework." Relief rushed through me until he added, "But I have a concern. A little bird told me you lack stability, that you're impulsive, that you walked out on your husband, leaving him financially stranded. Investors don't like instability." My blood ran cold. Only one person could have planted that poison. Daniel. I kept my face calm, but my insides twisted. "My personal life has nothing to do with my company." Julian shrugged. "In this world, reputation is everything. I need to know the people I back won't collapse under pressure." The meeting ended politely, but the damage was clear. Daniel had found a way to reach into the one place I had tried to rebuild and smear my name before it could take root. That night, anger boiled through me. Marian found me pacing her living room, fists clenched. "He's sabotaging me," I spat. "He told Julian I'm unstable, that I walked out with nothing. He wants me to fail just so he can be right." Marianne's eyes narrowed. "Then you gather proof. Not just of your business but of him. If he wants to play dirty, you play smart. Document everything. Build your case. Make sure when you rise he can't pull you down." Her words lit something inside me. The betrayal cut deep. I had left Daniel to escape his control, but here he was, reaching back into my life, poisoning the ground beneath my feet. I spent the next weeks in quiet fury, gathering every scrap of evidence I could. Old emails where he dismissed my ideas as nonsense. Text messages where he belittled my efforts. Financial statements proving I had managed our household while he squandered money on frivolous things. I built a second binder, this one not about my company but about Daniel himself, a record of his contempt, his sabotage, his lies. But the real test came 2 weeks later. Julian called again. "I've thought about your proposal," he said. "I'd like to see a live demo. If you can prove the tech works, I might reconsider." It was my second chance, but it came with a risk. A live demo meant exposure. If anything failed, it would confirm Daniel's slander. I worked tirelessly, coding, testing, polishing. Marian sat beside me at night, bringing coffee, reminding me to breathe. Every line of code felt like a heartbeat, every successful test a lifeline. The day of the demo arrived. My hands trembled as I set up in Julian's conference room. Investors watched with sharp eyes. The platform loaded smoothly. The AI interface spoke clearly, analyzing financial data, offering solutions with precision. When it ended, Julian nodded slowly. "You've proven the concept. I'll consider a preliminary investment." Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. As I packed up, a man approached. One of Julian's junior partners. He leaned closer, voice low. "Be careful. Your ex has friends in this circle. He's spreading rumors. Don't let him catch you off guard." My stomach knotted. Daniel wasn't done. He wasn't just whispering behind my back. He was building a campaign to destroy me before I could rise. The warning from Julian's partner rattled me more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just Daniel's voice anymore. It was his influence spreading, seeping into the spaces I was trying to claim as my own. If he had friends in these circles, then my battle wasn't just personal. It was strategic. That night, Marian found me at the dining table surrounded by papers, receipts, and my laptop screen glowing with spreadsheets. She leaned against the doorway. "You're building something again, aren't you?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "This time it's not just my company. It's proof. Proof of who Daniel really is, and proof of who I've always been." I started with our old accounts. I had handled the bills during our marriage, meticulously filing statements that Daniel never bothered to check. They told a story, a pattern of irresponsibility hidden behind his condescending words. Restaurant bills when he claimed to be working late. Credit card charges for clothes I never saw. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. I organized them into folders, each labeled negligence, waste, lies. Then I dug into my own trail. College transcripts with honors, freelance contracts showing my steady work, client testimonials praising my reliability. For every "she's unstable," Daniel whispered, I collected 3 pieces of evidence proving stability, discipline, and resilience. The binder grew thick, a shield made of paper and truth. But I didn't stop there. I contacted Isaac, a colleague from my freelance days, who had once invited Daniel and me to a networking event. I remembered Daniel leaving early, muttering that the people there were nobodies. Isaac remembered too. He laughed at you behind your back, he told me. Said you were wasting time with dreamers. I didn't tell you then because I didn't want to hurt you. Now he sent me an email detailing what Daniel had said. Another piece for the record. Marian helped me dig deeper. She had kept a few of Daniel's text messages to her over the years, snide comments about me, dismissing my ambitions, telling her to talk sense into me. She forwarded them to me, her eyes full of quiet fire. I should have shared these sooner, she said. I shook my head. You're sharing them now. That's what matters. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. A former coworker of Daniel's reached out after hearing rumors about me. Her name was Teresa, and she remembered Daniel bragging at the office about how he kept his wife in check. He said you wanted to start a company, Teresa told me, her voice crackling through the phone. He laughed. Said he'd never let you burn through his money on a fantasy. Honestly, Veronica, it always bothered me. You were too smart to be talked about that way. Her words, paired with her willingness to write a statement, gave me something more than evidence. Gave me validation. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined his cruelty. Meanwhile, my company began to take shape. Late nights of coding turned into a functioning platform. I built a small team of freelancers who believed in the vision. Slowly, piece by piece, it became more than an idea scribbled in a notebook. It became real. Julian's firm tested an early version and approved a seed investment. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to move forward. I signed the papers with shaking hands, aware of how close I was to everything Daniel said I'd never achieve. But even in victory, his shadow loomed. One evening, Marianne and I sat reviewing the binder. She tapped her finger on the growing stack of documents. This isn't just about Daniel. It's about your narrative. You're building evidence not just against him but for yourself. Proof that you're not unstable, that you've always been the one holding the pieces together. I nodded slowly. I want him to see it. To see that every lie he told is dismantled by truth. Marianne's eyes softened. You want revenge? Yes, I admitted. But not the kind he'd expect. I don't want to scream at him or throw his clothes into the street. I want him to sit in a room, surrounded by people he respects, and watch as every lie he told collapses. I want him to choke on humiliation. By the end of that month, the record was complete. Receipts, testimonies, transcripts, contracts. A paper fortress. But revenge is never just about gathering proof. It's about timing. And timing came sooner than expected. Julian called again. This time not for a private demo but for a showcase event. A gala where new startups would pitch to a room of investors, journalists, and corporate leaders. This is your moment, Julian told me. But be warned. These events are open. Anyone can attend. My chest tightened. I didn't need him to say it. I already knew. Daniel would be there. As I closed the call, I stared at the binder on my desk. For years, he had laughed at me, sabotaged me, and told me I'd never be anything. Soon, in front of a room full of powerful people, I would prove him wrong. The moment Julian mentioned the gala, my stomach twisted. It was everything I had worked for. A chance to pitch in front of investors who could take my company from a fragile seed to a towering tree. But I knew Daniel. He would not miss a chance to sabotage me on the biggest stage of my life. I couldn't fight this battle alone. I needed allies. The first was obvious, Marianne. She had been my anchor through nights of doubt and fury. When I told her about the gala, she didn't hesitate. I'll be there, she said. And if Daniel shows his face, I'll make sure everyone remembers who you are. Not who he says you are. Her loyalty warmed me, but I knew we needed more than love. We needed strategy. That's where Evelyn came in. She was a lawyer Marianne had introduced me to months earlier when Daniel first tried to interfere with my finances. Evelyn had a sharp mind, the kind that cut straight through excuses. She sat across from me at her office table, flipping through the binder I had built. "This," she said, tapping the stack of receipts and testimonies, "isn't just evidence. It's leverage. If Daniel tries to smear you at the gala, we can counter with fact. But more than that, Veronica, you can preempt him. Don't just defend yourself. Frame the story before he ever opens his mouth." Her words clicked like a lock in my chest. "You mean show them the truth before he twists it?" "Exactly. Control the narrative. Once you stand on that stage, you're not just a founder. You're proof that you've already survived worse than market competition. You've survived sabotage." But the gala wasn't only about Daniel. I needed someone who understood the optics, the performance. That's when I turned to Harper, a public relations consultant I had met at a networking event. She had a talent for turning messy stories into triumphs. When I explained my situation, Harper grinned. "You're in luck. People love underdog stories. A woman underestimated, dismissed, betrayed, only to rise as a leader? That's the kind of narrative that gets headlines. If Daniel shows up, don't shrink from it. Use it. Let his arrogance spotlight your resilience." Her confidence was contagious. She helped me refine not just the pitch but the way I carried myself. Posture, pauses, where to let silence work for me. "Remember," she said. A calm smile cuts deeper than a shout. Together, the three of them, Marianne, Evelyn, and Harper, became my shield and my sword. We mapped every possibility. If Daniel tried to question me during the Q&A, I'd answer with facts from the record. If he whispered rumors, Evelyn would have legal documents ready to counter. If the press latched onto his presence, Harper would shape the story to make me look stronger, not weaker. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't fighting in the dark. I had a team. The days leading up to the gala blurred into long hours of preparation. Marian drilled me with mock questions. Evelyn updated me on protective measures she could file if Daniel crossed a line. Harper rehearsed my opening lines until they rolled off my tongue like second nature. Yet at night, when the house was quiet, doubt still whispered. I remembered Daniel's sneer. "You'll never be anything." What if he was right? What if all this preparation collapsed in one public failure? Marian caught me one evening staring blankly at my laptop. She placed a hand over mine. "Veronica, you've already won. You left him. You built this. Whatever happens at the gala, you're not the woman he defined anymore. You're the woman who defines herself." Her words steadied me like a rope pulled tight. The night before the gala, Harper insisted on a dress rehearsal in the actual venue. The conference hall was massive, chandeliers glittering, the stage looming with spotlights that made me squint. Standing there, I felt small, until I imagined Daniel in the audience. That thought made me stand taller. Harper clapped her hands. "Good. That fire in your eyes? Keep it. Investors don't just fund ideas. They fund people. They want to see you own the room." As we wrapped up, Evelyn handed me a slim folder. "One more thing. If he steps out of line, if he shouts, disrupts, or tries to humiliate you, I'll have security remove him. You won't fight this alone." I exhaled, clutching the folder. "Thank you." When I returned home that night, I laid out my clothes for the gala. A tailored navy dress, sharp but understated. I placed my company's pitch materials in a neat portfolio. And then on the corner of the desk, I set the record. Because tomorrow wasn't just about business. It was about justice. The morning of the gala dawned clear. The city sparkled with anticipation. As I stood before the mirror, fastening the clasp of a silver necklace, Marianne's voice echoed from the doorway. "Ready to show them who you really are?" I smiled at my reflection, a calm resolve in my eyes. "Yes, ready." But even as I spoke, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "See you tonight, Veronica. Don't think you can hide behind your slides. Everyone will know the truth." My hands tightened around the phone. It was Daniel. He was coming, and he wanted war. The message from Daniel glowed on my phone like a spark threatening to ignite the whole night. "See you tonight, Veronica. Don't think you can hide behind your slides. Everyone will know the truth." For a second, I almost let fear creep in. But then I remembered Evelyn's voice. "Control the narrative. If Daniel wanted a stage, I would make sure the spotlight burned him, not me. That afternoon, the four of us gathered in Harper's office, a small war room with whiteboards lining the walls. Marianne paced near the window, Evelyn spread legal documents across the table, and Harper wrote bold words in thick marker. Own the room. Okay, Harper began. If Daniel shows up, he's not coming to watch. He's coming to perform. That means our job is to make his performance backfire. She underlined the words twice. We broke it down into steps. Step 1. Anticipate the outburst. Evelyn explained. If he shouts during your pitch, you don't engage emotionally. You pause. Let the silence work. People will turn to him, not you. Security will be ready. Step 2. Preempt the narrative. Harper pointed to me. You mention resilience in your story. Without naming him, you talk about overcoming betrayal and sabotage. That way, when he tries to expose you, it looks like you already admitted the hardship and rose above it. Step 3. Weaponize the evidence. Marianne slid the record closer. If he pushes too far, we use the binder. But only then. It's our ace. He has no idea how much you've collected. I studied the binder. Inside were years of receipts, testimonies, text messages, every shred of proof that his lies had always been about control. It wasn't just paper. It was a mirror waiting to show him what he had become. But timing was everything. Evelyn warned me. If you lead with it, you look vindictive. If he forces your hand, you look prepared. That difference is everything. We rehearsed again and again. Harper played Daniel, interrupting with cruel barbs. You're unstable, Veronica, she shouted in a mock voice. I inhaled, smiled calmly, and replied. Some said I'd never make it. But here I am, showing you what resilience looks like. Good, Harper said. Now again, but slower. Own the silence. By the 10th round, my responses felt natural, almost instinctive. That evening, Evelyn added another layer. She contacted event security, briefing them discreetly. There's a chance of disruption. A man named Daniel Hale. Watch him. The guard nodded. If he causes a scene, we'll escort him out quietly. It was a safety net I hadn't realized I needed. As the final preparations wrapped, Marianne sat beside me, her eyes steady. Do you remember what he said the night you left? I nodded. You'll never be anything. She leaned closer. Tomorrow you're not just proving him wrong. You're proving yourself right. That's bigger. Her words sank deep, softening the knot in my chest. The next day, the city buzzed with energy. Investors in tailored suits streamed into the grand hall, chandeliers glinting above rows of tables set with crisp white linens. Journalists lingered near the back, cameras ready. I stood backstage, heart pounding, portfolio in hand. Harper adjusted my jacket, smoothing the fabric. Evelyn checked her phone for the 100th time. Marianne squeezed my hand. You're ready, she whispered. Then the host's voice boomed across the hall. Next, we welcome Veronica Lane, founder of Astrotech. Applause rippled. Lights flared. I stepped onto the stage. For the first few minutes it went smoothly. My slides lit the screen behind me. My voice carried steady through the microphone. I spoke about innovation, accessibility, resilience. Faces in the crowd leaned forward, curious, interested. And then I saw him. Daniel. Sitting near the front, his suit immaculate, his smirk familiar. His eyes locked on mine with a challenge. My throat tightened, but I kept speaking. I had rehearsed for this. Halfway through my pitch, he stood. So tell us, Veronica, he called loudly, his voice dripping with contempt. How does someone who couldn't even keep her marriage together expect to run a company? Gasps scattered through the hall. Whispers rose like a wave. All eyes turned to me. This was it. The moment we had planned for. I paused, letting the silence stretch. My heart hammered, but I held his gaze calm. Then I smiled. Some people said I'd never be anything, I said into the microphone. But the truth is, their doubt only built the fire that got me here. And tonight, I'm not just standing on this stage. I'm proving them wrong. The crowd erupted in applause. Daniel's smirk faltered. The applause rose around me like a shield. But even inside that wave of support, I saw Daniel's face harden. His smirk slipped, replaced by something sharper. Anger, maybe even panic. For the first time, it wasn't me under the spotlight. It was him. But Daniel wasn't the type to retreat quietly. The moderator of the gala, a polished man in a gray suit, cleared his throat. "Thank you, Ms. Lane. We'll now take a few questions from the panel." Before he could finish, Daniel raised his hand and strode toward the microphone set up in the aisle. Murmurs rippled through the audience. His confidence radiated like poison. "I have a question," he announced loudly, ignoring the fact that he wasn't on the list of approved questioners. "How can investors trust someone who ran away from responsibility, who left her husband high and dry, then rewrites the story to make herself look like a hero?" Gasps echoed. The host looked flustered. Security stirred at the edges of the room, but Daniel held himself just shy of outright disruption. He knew the line. My pulse thundered. This was the pivot, the moment Harper had warned me about. If I faltered, his words could seed doubt. I lifted my chin. "It's true," I said calmly into the microphone. "I left my marriage. But not because I couldn't handle responsibility, because I was the only one handling it. I managed the bills, the debts, the roof over our heads while being told I was nothing. And instead of breaking, I built." Applause rippled again. Hesitant but growing. Daniel's jaw twitched. He hadn't expected me to take his accusation and flip it. He leaned toward the microphone again. "If you built so much, Veronica, where was your company 5 years ago? Where were the investors then? You needed me and you still failed." I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, a voice cut across the hall. Strong, clear, unwavering. "She didn't fail, Daniel. She carried you." Every head turned. Marian stood from her seat, her voice ringing out. "I watched her cover for your debts. I saw her save every receipt while you wasted money. You call her unstable? She's the reason you stayed afloat as long as you did." Gasps again, louder this time. Whispers spread like fire. Daniel's composure cracked. "This is slander," he snapped. "None of you know what really happened." But Evelyn rose next, holding up a slim folder. Her tone was crisp, professional, lethal. "On the contrary, we know exactly what happened. Veronica has documented evidence. Financial statements, testimonies, proof of every expense she carried alone while you tried to sabotage her dreams." She didn't wave the folder dramatically. She simply laid it on the moderator's table, calm and deliberate. The symbolism was enough. The crowd shifted. Investors leaned forward, suddenly more curious about the woman with proof than the man with accusations. Harper seized the moment. She whispered something to the journalist seated behind her, and I caught the flicker of recognition on his face. He began scribbling notes furiously. She had turned the disruption into a headline. "Startup founder faces sabotaging ex and stands tall." The tide was turning. But Daniel wasn't finished. He stepped closer to the microphone, his voice louder, almost desperate. "You think she's strong? You think she can run a company? She's nothing without me. I gave her everything." The words echoed ugly and raw. The audience recoiled. It was no longer confidence, it was desperation laid bare. I inhaled, steadying my voice. "Daniel, you didn't give me everything. You gave me obstacles. You gave me doubt. And that became fuel. So yes, in a way you did help me. But not the way you think." The hall erupted in applause, louder than before. Cameras flashed. Investors nodded, impressed not just by the technology one had pitched, but by the composure I carried in the face of sabotage. Still, even as the crowd swayed to my side, I saw something dangerous flicker in Daniel's eyes. He wasn't just embarrassed, he was cornered. And men like Daniel didn't go quietly when cornered. As the moderator tried to regain order, Daniel muttered something to a man seated in the second row. A man I didn't recognize. He wore a tailored suit, eyes sharp, face unreadable. The man stood, adjusted his tie, and stepped toward another microphone. "Actually," he said smoothly, "I do have a question for Ms. Lane. Can you explain this transfer?" He held up a paper, numbers bold in black ink. My stomach dropped. I recognized it instantly. A bank statement from the final year of my marriage, when money had been drained from our joint account. But it wasn't me who had taken it. It was Daniel. My chest tightened. Somehow, Daniel had twisted the evidence, weaponizing it against me. And now, in front of the very people I needed to win, my credibility was on the line. The paper in the stranger's hand looked like a dagger aimed straight at me. A bank statement, numbers bolded in black ink, highlighted in yellow. Gasps rippled through the room as he held it aloft. "Ms. Lane," he said, his voice slick with confidence, "this shows a withdrawal of $50,000 from your joint account. Right before you left your husband. How can investors trust you with their money if you can't even manage your own?" A hush fell. I could feel every eye on me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shake the microphone from its stand. Daniel sat back down, smirk curling his lips again. He thought he had me cornered, branded as a thief before the very people whose trust one needed most. But he hadn't planned on one thing. I was ready. I lifted my chin, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Thank you for your question," I said evenly. "That withdrawal did happen. But the truth is in the context Daniel conveniently forgot to mention." I turned to Evelyn, who was already standing, sliding a page from the record. She handed it to the moderator, who scanned it quickly. His brows shot upward. "This document," Evelyn announced to the room, her tone crisp, "shows that the withdrawal was used to cover Daniel Hale's unpaid debts. Gambling debts, to be precise." Gasps erupted again, louder this time. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like wildfire through the hall. Daniel shot to his feet, face red. "That's a lie. She forged that." But Evelyn was already ready. She pulled out a notarized letter. "We anticipated this denial. Here is confirmation from the bank itself, showing the payments made directly to a casino in Daniel Hale's name." The moderator passed the page along the panel. The investors leaned in, murmuring among themselves. Daniel's smirk shattered. I stepped closer to the microphone, my voice ringing clear. "For years, I carried the weight of his debts while he told me I was unstable. Every paycheck I earned, every project I took, went not into building my dreams, but into patching the holes he left behind. That withdrawal wasn't theft. It was survival." The audience burst into applause. Even some of the journalists stood, clapping. The man with the statement shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing he'd been fed a losing card. He slunk back into his seat, avoiding Daniel's furious glare. But I wasn't finished. I turned to the crowd. "Daniel wanted you to see me as reckless. But the truth is, I was the one who kept everything together. I tracked every expense, every payment, every sacrifice. That's why I built the record. Because the same discipline I used to survive him is the discipline I've used to build Astrotech." I gestured toward the binder Evelyn had placed on the table. Its weight seemed to anchor the entire room. "This binder is proof that resilience is not theory. It's my reality. And that resilience is exactly what will carry this company forward." The room erupted again, louder, stronger, like a tide sweeping Daniel's accusations away. Investors nodded, journalists scribbled furiously, and applause filled the hall. Daniel's composure crumbled completely. He tried to shout over the noise. "She's lying. She's manipulating you. She." But the moderator raised his hand sharply. "Mr. Hale, that's enough. Security." 2 guards moved swiftly, flanking Daniel. He struggled for a moment, but the room was no longer his. As they escorted him toward the exit, the audience's eyes weren't on me with doubt anymore. They were on him with disdain. Lila's replacement, this time the stranger Daniel had dragged in, slipped out quietly, realizing the fight was lost. I stood at the microphone, heart hammering but face calm. "For years," I said, my voice carrying above the crowd, "I was told I'd never be anything, that I was worthless. Tonight, I stand here not only as the founder of a company investors believe in, but as proof that no one can define you except yourself." The applause swelled into a roar. Journalists crowded closer. The spotlight, once a weapon Daniel had tried to turn against me, now felt like a crown of light. As the noise filled the room, I caught Daniel's eyes one last time as security forced him through the doors. He looked smaller now, deflated. His arrogance dissolved into something pitiful. And in that moment I knew. The execution was complete. My revenge wasn't screaming or throwing accusations. It was letting him destroy himself while I stood, steady, unshaken, victorious. But even as the doors closed behind him, I felt a whisper of unease. Daniel had lost tonight, but men like him rarely vanished quietly. Tomorrow would bring new battles, and I needed to be ready. The doors slammed behind Daniel, and for a moment, the silence in the hall was louder than any outburst he had made. Then, like a wave breaking against the shore, the applause came. Long, sustained, almost cathartic. The audience was no longer divided. They weren't whispering doubt, they were cheering me. The moderator cleared his throat, visibly relieved. "Thank you, Ms. Lane, for your presentation. I believe we've seen a perfect example tonight not only of innovation, but of resilience." It was subtle, but I caught the way the word resilience echoed through the hall. Investors latched onto it. Journalists scribbled it down. In that single moment, Daniel's attempt to paint me as reckless had collapsed into the exact opposite. I stepped back from the podium, pulse still hammering in my ears, and moved to the panel table where investors waited to shake my hand. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, gripped my hand firmly. "You kept composure under fire," he said. "That's rarer than a good idea. I want a follow-up meeting next week." Another leaned closer. "If you can handle a disruption like that in public, you can handle market turbulence. Let's talk numbers." The avalanche had begun. The very stage Daniel tried to use against me had become the launchpad I'd been waiting for. Meanwhile, the audience buzzed with murmurs about Daniel. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered in tones that carried just enough for me to hear. "I can't believe he tried that. She held herself better than half the CEOs I've seen. Did you hear about the casino debts? Unreal." Daniel's reputation wasn't just dented, it was shattered. In a room full of the city's most influential voices, he had revealed himself not as the victim, but as the saboteur. Marian rushed to my side, her smile wide, tears shining in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered fiercely. "You didn't just stand up to him. You owned the entire room." Evelyn joined her, tapping the record with a proud smile. "I told you, it's not about the paper. It's about timing. And tonight you used it perfectly." Harper was already on her phone, her voice low but urgent as she spoke to a journalist. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and leaned toward me. "Tomorrow morning, every headline will be yours. And I made sure the story is written your way. The betrayed woman who rose higher, who turned sabotage into triumph." Even so, the adrenaline coursing through me hadn't fully settled. I found myself scanning the edges of the room, half expecting Daniel to burst back in, red-faced and raging. But security held their posts near the doors, and the only faces turned toward me now were admiring, curious, and respectful. The rest of the event passed in a blur. Other startups pitched, but I noticed the journalists kept circling back to me, cameras flashing, notebooks filling. By the end of the evening, I had 5 serious investor meetings booked and 3 interview requests from major outlets. The tide had fully shifted. As the gala wound down, I stepped outside into the crisp night air. The city lights glittered against the dark sky, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of Daniel's words lift off me completely. "You'll never be anything." He was wrong. And now everyone knew it. Marian looped her arm through mine. "Do you hear that?" she asked. I frowned. "Hear what?" She grinned. "The silence. No one's whispering against you anymore. They're whispering against him." But not everything was triumph. As we made our way toward the car, a man in a black coat stepped from the shadows. One of the event staff, his badge dangling from his neck. He handed me an envelope. "Mr. Hale asked me to deliver this before he was escorted out," he muttered, before disappearing back into the night. My stomach twisted as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Daniel's handwriting sharp and angry. "You think you've won. But wars aren't won in one night. Be ready." I crushed the paper in my fist, my victory soured by the threat. Back at Marianne's apartment, Evelyn insisted on filing for a restraining order first thing in the morning. Harper drafted a statement for the press. Marianne brewed tea, her calm presence a balm against the adrenaline still sparking in my chest. "You took the stage tonight," Marianne said softly. "But tomorrow the real fallout begins." She was right. Daniel had lost the crowd, the investors, the room. But his pride wouldn't let him disappear quietly. I lay awake that night, the city buzzing outside, the letters' words haunting me. Daniel was finished in that hall, but what would he try next? The morning after the gala, I woke to the buzz of my phone. Dozens of messages, Missed calls and email notifications blinked across the screen. For a second, panic gripped me. But then I saw the headlines. Betrayed wife turns tables at gala. Startup founder shines under pressure. From doubt to triumph. Veronica Lane proves strength beyond the stage. Ex-husband's outburst backfires. Investor interest skyrockets. I sat up in bed, clutching the phone, unable to stop the tears that filled my eyes. Not tears of fear this time. Tears of relief. Tears of vindication. Marianne burst into the room holding a newspaper, grinning ear to ear. Front page, Veronica. Front page. She threw the paper onto the bed. There I was, my face lit by stage lights, calm and composed at the microphone. Daniel's furious profile blurred in the background as security escorted him out. "Look at this photo," Marianne said, her voice trembling with pride. "They captured exactly what happened. You rose. He fell." I touched the image gently, the weight of years of doubt peeling off my shoulders like old skin. The calls came next. Julian's office wanted to schedule a second meeting, this time with his full board. Another investor wanted exclusivity rights. Journalists requested interviews, some even offering cover stories. Evelyn called too. Her voice was sharp but satisfied. "The restraining order is in motion. After last night's scene and the letter he sent, the judge won't hesitate. Daniel won't be able to come within 200 feet of you." Relief washed over me. For the first time there was a legal barrier between me and his wrath. But victory wasn't just professional. Old friends, people who had quietly pulled away when Daniel spread his poison, reached out with apologies. "I'm sorry I believed him," one message read. "I see now what he did to you. You deserved better." Another wrote, "I always knew you were stronger than he said. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm proud of you." It felt like pieces of myself, stolen by whispers and lies, were finally being returned. Of course, not all messages were kind. A few came from Daniel himself, scattered across different numbers and emails, desperate in tone. "This isn't over. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You'll regret it. If you think you've won, you're wrong." Evelyn instructed me to save every one of them. "Each message is another nail in the coffin," she said. He's digging his own grave. Still, each threat made my chest tighten. Victory didn't erase the danger. Later that day, Harper arrived at Marianne's apartment carrying her laptop. She showed me a flood of online chatter. "Look," she said, scrolling through Twitter feeds. "The narrative is locked. You're the woman who stood tall while her ex unraveled. That's the story people are telling. Investors love it. Journalists love it. And most importantly, ordinary people love it. You're not just a CEO now. You're a symbol." I stared at the screen, humbled. For years I had been invisible, erased by Daniel's narrative. Now my name was everywhere. By evening, offers had grown so overwhelming that Marianne joked we needed a secretary just to manage them. "You remember when he said you'd never be anything?" she asked, flopping onto the couch with a glass of wine. "Now look. You're in every paper, every feed, every conversation in this city." I laughed softly, though the ache in my chest reminded me that triumph still carried shadows. "Yes," I said. "But he's not finished. He'll find another way." Marianne's expression sobered. "And when he does, we'll be ready." That night, I allowed myself one quiet moment of celebration. I stepped onto the balcony, the city lights twinkling like stars at my feet. The hum of traffic below sounded less like chaos and more like music. For the first time in years, I whispered the words aloud, not as a dream but as a fact. I am something. But as I turned back inside, my phone buzzed with a final message. This one wasn't from Daniel. It was from an unknown number, no name attached. "You humiliated the wrong man. We'll see each other again soon." The chill ran down my spine. Was it Daniel, hiding behind another borrowed number? Or someone else he had roped into his crusade? My heart pounded as I set the phone on the table. Tomorrow I would stand taller than ever. But tonight I realized the war might not be over. It might only just be beginning. The weeks after the gala moved faster than I could have imagined. Investor meetings blurred together. Contracts were signed. Astrotech, once just an idea scribbled in notebooks by candlelight, now had funding, staff, and offices buzzing with energy. My face appeared on the business section covers, my name attached to words like visionary and CEO. But none of it felt as sharp, as vivid, as the moment Daniel was escorted out of that hall. That was the true turning point, not just for my company but for me. For years his words had been chains. You'll never be anything. You're unstable. You're nothing without me. I carried them like scars under my skin. But scars can harden into armor. And on that stage I discovered I no longer needed to hide them. They were proof of survival. People asked me later if I hated him, if my revenge was about destroying him. But the truth is I didn't need to destroy him. He did that all by himself. My revenge was simply choosing to rise, to stand in the very places he said I never would, and to let him witness it. That is what broke him. Even now his messages trickle in, each more desperate than the last. Evelyn handles them with the courts. Marion screens my calls. Harper ensures the press stays focused on my triumph, not his tantrums. And me? I no longer tremble when his name appears on my phone, because I know what he doesn't. He's already lost. The last time I saw him was by accident. I was leaving a meeting downtown when I spotted him across the street. His suit was rumpled, his face gaunt, his eyes darting as though searching for someone to blame. For a moment, I thought he might cross the street, but he didn't. He just stared, a hollow reflection of the man who once told me I was nothing. I walked away without a word. And it was the sweetest revenge I'd ever tasted. Now, as I sit in my new office with the city skyline stretching beyond the windows, I think of the people who might be listening to my story. Maybe you've been told the same things. Maybe someone close to you whispers that you're worthless, that you'll never rise, that your dreams are foolish. Listen to me, they are wrong. Your worth isn't defined by their fear or their cruelty. It's defined by your persistence, by your refusal to let betrayal be the final word. The people who try to bury you are often terrified of how high you can grow. So grow anyway. My name is Veronica Lane. Once I was the woman told she'd never be anything. Now I am the CEO of a company worth millions. But more importantly, I am a woman who took betrayal and turned it into fuel. And if you've been betrayed, if you've been silenced, if you've been told you're nothing, remember this. Revenge doesn't always mean fire. Sometimes it means light. The light of living so fully, so successfully, that the people who tried to break you can only watch as you rise. If my story spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear that betrayal isn't the end. It's the beginning. Subscribe for more stories of justice, resilience, and the power of standing tall. And never forget, you are stronger than the people who doubt you. Because sometimes the best revenge is not screaming back. The best revenge is walking forward, confident, unshaken and free.